What is up, survivors? I'm Ace of Nova and welcome to my next quick guide video, this time covering Reaper taming. There's plenty of guides out there on this already, but too many of them are way too long and don't have all the pieces of crucial information. Others have just way too much in them, which can prove knowing what's actually important to be difficult to know. So I wanted to compile as short a video as possible without sacrificing critical elements of information. By the end of this guide, my goal is to have listed everything you need to know about successfully taming Reapers, to include the tames you'll need, what items to bring, the crucial do's and don'ts that I learned the hard way. These creatures are going to be available in Genesis Part 2, the skin variant that you can see in this video's thumbnail. Alright, so first, let's talk about tames. The most obvious question when planning any Apex Predator raid is, how do I actually tame one? Well, Reapers are very unique in that you have to find a Reaper queen and critically wound it, and this will trigger a final attack resulting in the impregnation of your specific survivor. The resulting baby, if raised properly, is going to be yours to keep. I would recommend letting your Reaper child know they're adopted at a very young age to prevent them from destroying everything you hold dear, as these adult Reapers are competitive with the toughest of Rexes in regards to their melee damage. But Reapers do have the jump of Procoptodons are friendly kangaroos, and an ability that allows them to push enemies backward, as you're actually going to see later on in this video. It does it to me. These abilities, combined with its high health for me, make them superior to Rexes. But since there's no Rexes in Aberration, what should you challenge them with? Well, beyond the shadow of a doubt, my recommendation and what's featured in this guide is the Rock Drake. The terrain where Reapers spawn is very tough to navigate, and it's filled with Rock Drakes, Spinos, Megalosaurus, and several other creatures. So having a creature that can hold its own in a fight with the added ability of being able to easily flee if a combative scenario is a must. So not only that, but you're also able to use items on them while you are mounted, such as spyglass, the rifles, magnifying glass, which is going to be very important today. So get yourself a Rock Drake, level its health, stamina, and melee up a bit, and get used to those flight controls since they can be a little bit tricky. And since today's guide is all about Reapers, I'm not going to get into Rock Drakes any further. To briefly touch on the location of these Reapers, you just saw the lat long that I have displayed, about 6273. The Reapers are all over this stretch up and down. You're not going to have a hard time finding these creatures. Look for the burial mounds. You'll kind of see like a plume of dust moving around in the area, similar to a Nameless, but much larger. You can see me kind of floating around there. In this next stretch I'm about to enter, the one, right there where I'm gliding, that's where I see the Reapers start to spawn very, very commonly. I was recently in this area, so I'd wiped a couple that were here. But starting in this stretch and then continuing onward, they can pretty much spawn anywhere. And you are not going to have a difficult time finding these guys, I promise you. The next tame I'm going to talk about, because it is an absolute must for the venture today, and that is a creature with Charge Light. The one I would recommend personally is a Featherlight. They're the only Charge Light flyer, so you can enable them to passive flee in an area. In case you get killed, then there's at least a chance that your creature is going to get away without dying itself. Other than that, the Featherlight has one of the fastest light recharge rates in the game, which is useful because you'll be turning them off and on a lot. To tame this creature, all you have to do is feed them a plant species Z seed. You get these by finding a natural plant of that type as featured in the background video and stand near it. That's it. Every 60 seconds it's going to spit out a seed, and lower level Featherlights can be tamed with a single feed on official servers. If you want a higher level one, of course you're going to need to bring more seeds, but for today's purposes the level really does not matter. The other creature you could tame is the Bulb Dog. They have the overall highest charge capacity in the game, meaning their light will stay illuminated the longest of any Charge Light creature, but if you die they will likely follow. To tame these creatures, all you have to do is use the standard tranquilizing technique. Alright, so I keep talking about these Charge Light creatures, right? What do you need those for exactly? Well, the reason for them is twofold. Number one, you probably already know, Charge Light staves off Nameless, which really are just kind of an annoyance. They continuously spawn, they creep up from the ground, and they try to attack you when you're not suspecting. They're very easy to kill, but they just never stop coming, but that Charge Light will prevent it. But the secondary purpose of the Charge Light is far more critical. The Charge Light will debuff the Reaper significantly, which will allow you to do several times more damage. Without it, getting a Reaper to low health is nearly impossible, as they have an unbelievably fast health recharge. So watch closely in the background video. You're going to see me actually using my emote wheel to turn the light on and off. You do not want to get into fights with Reapers and risk getting off your Rock Drake, throwing your Featherlight or Bulldog onto the ground, turn off its light, and then get back on your tame. There's just way too much that can go wrong in that period of time. Rock Drakes are apex predators, and so very few creatures will attack it, but the moment you get off, you're going to be attacked by nearby predators, the most annoying of which is probably the Purlovias, and those can all cause you to fail this. So practice turning it off a few times through the emote wheel. just to get comfortable with it. I've noticed sometimes that if you select the wrong section of the wheel, it can get stuck. So just to fix this issue by holding whatever button that normally brings up your menu. So for me, when I was playing on Xbox, I just hold the B button, it brings the menu back up and we'll reset it. Next, we're going to cover the items that you're going to need. Build yourself a small area to give birth in. If you already have an enclosed structure that does not have any other tames inside of it, that's going to work just fine. I tried using a dino leash as well, but they don't work on the babies. It's kind of wander outside of the range. But when a baby Reaper is born, it's going to attack anything that hasn't ingested an item called a Reaper pheromone gland. And you get these simply by killing Queen Reapers. It's very easy. Once you have it, you can eat it yourself and force feed it to your tames within your structure that you don't want the baby to attack. If you have a specific level of mind for the Reaper, then of course you're going to want to just use a spyglass. If you don't really care about the level, kind of like me running around the video just trying to find them, then all you really need to bring is a magnifying glass. This is going to allow you to see the Reaper's health when you think it's starting to get low. I would also recommend bringing in some med brew, and you're going to see why shortly, but it's certainly not required. Also keep in mind you're going to be in a radiation area, so of course you're going to need hazmat gear. If you're still rocking primitive, consider bringing 2 sets. It's very easy to mess up and get your gear broken. The final item I would highly recommend is a shield. It can be tech, riot, or metal, all of which I'm going to be using in the video. Just note that Reapers can break them rather easily, so definitely bring a few. Alright, now we're on to the good stuff. So how do you tame a Reaper exactly? Should I set a trap? Do I need a friend to help me out? Oddly enough, my recommendation for both of those is no. I found that traps have all sorts of bugs with the Reaper when it's supposed to pick you up and impregnate you, and you'll often just end up having to kill it anyway. And then having multiple friends there is fine, but just make sure you delegate roles very specifically. I can't tell you how many Reapers I've seen get killed because too many players were hitting the thing. When I decided to actually help some friends out, we noticed that the best method was basically to have a single person actually dealing damage to the Reaper. So one person has that role. Everybody else, if not maybe just one other person, is going to be using the magnifying glass to figure out what the health is, and then they're going to call it out to the damage dealer. So if you're not the person who was dealing that damage, do not ever hit it unless they specifically call you out by name to do so. Being calm during the fight can be the difference between a win or a loss. So for today's video, we're going to be assuming that you're solo and not using any traps. When you find a Reaper, they're often burrowing underground, as you can see in the video, so the first thing you're going to want to do is apply the proper settings to the tames that you've brought. So ensure your charge light is on, as you can see the debuff on the bottom right of my HUD, and make sure your tame that you're riding is on passive. Get as close to it as you can before it aggroes so you can start damaging it while it's in its unburrowing animation. Once you see the green blood on it start to thicken, that's when you should start to look at its health with the magnifying glass. Now, assuming you're decent at math, you'll know rather quickly how many more hits it can sustain. If you don't know the exact number of damage that your dino deals, like we can in the video clearly, I would recommend hitting a training dummy to find out. It'll let you know exactly what your DPS is. So anyway, once the Reaper is within 1 charge light strike of death, turn that light off using the emote wheel and count probably a good 5 seconds in your head before hitting it again, as sometimes that charge light will linger a bit longer even though that debuff icon is gone. So what you want to do here is get the Reaper under 2,000 health. Once it's at this point, you're going to see it start to glow red, and that red light is the indicator that's now ready to impregnate a survivor. But it's not going to impregnate anybody if there is a charge light on, even if it has a red glow, so just keep that in mind. So I personally like to get it under 1,000 HP for just an extra cushion. As I mentioned earlier, it regenerates health rapidly. Once it's at this point, you have 2 options. Now, this is where I've seen a lot of guides get a little vague, a little bit muddy, and the narrator seems to be a little bit unsure about what's going on, so let me clear this up. You have to get off your tame at this point, but for how long is up to you. If you would rather use a shield and wait for the Reaper to pick you up and then impregnate you, you can. Your other option is to dismount your creature and then get right back on. Either way, the Reaper should now pick you up at some point. If you choose to stay off your tame, make sure you hold your shield up right away. Don't try to anticipate the attack. The Reaper will absolutely hit you. It's going to hit your shield a couple times and then pick you up and impregnate you. If you get back on your tame, just kind of hang out in front of the Reaper, just a little bit of space in between you, and then it should just pull you right off your mount and then do the gross deed. Alright, so a bit of a lesson learned for me here. Always be very aware of your surroundings. That tail whip ability will launch you very far to your death if you're not paying attention to where you just hopped off your tame at. So just be very aware of your surroundings and don't do what I just tried to do. Cue the Lion King music. Either way, if you stayed on the ground to get impregnated or got back onto your tame, you're automatically going to drop to 1 HP once the Reaper impregnates you. At this point, down some med brew if you brought some, so that way you're not a one-shot, and then get back on your tame as quickly as possible. At this point, you do have the Reaper in your belly, and you're going to give birth to it unless you die beforehand. But also you have the option to level it up by killing other creatures around you. The experience gained will also be applied to your Reaper fetus and give it up to 75 additional level ups, which I suppose is basically their way of doing the taming efficiency. If you choose to get the level ups, which I would definitely recommend, hurry back to your base when you're done. Just also ensure that you have some of the Reaper pheromone glands that we discussed earlier, which again are awarded to survivors by just killing king or queen Reapers. So once you're safe at the base, I would recommend waiting until about you have 20 seconds left or so before the birth, and then ingest the glands to your survivor or any tames that are not protected by a wall. If you don't have any tames in the area, which you probably shouldn't, then don't worry about feeding them the gland. All it does is make the baby think that you're friendly, which really needs to happen once it's born, because your health is going to once again go down to 1 HP, and if the baby is aggroed, it's going to kill you instantly. So you need to have the gland protecting you until it reaches its juvenile state, which is going to occur at 10% maturation. So now that it's been born, it's going to run around rampantly looking for an exit. I have noticed that they calm down pretty fast if they're in a tighter enclosed space, but if you accidentally birth it outside of its pen, you're never going to find it. It's going to run off at such a sheer speed that you're never going to find it, and you can kiss all that hard work goodbye. But assuming you did it right, you birthed it inside of the pen, you can now claim it, begin feeding it raw meat, a lot of raw meat. Reapers go through food at a rate rivaling the Daedon, so you need to be constantly making sure that you have food ready to go. This is where a second player could come in handy if you need a break. If it does happen to hold still long enough, then you could put them inside a cryopod. It's just a little bit difficult to do. And then one last thing to note is that you don't have to have the pheromone gland active while you're away from the baby, only when you're actually sharing the same space that it's in. So at this point, you guys pretty much can take it from here. You imprint the bred King Reaper and then keep feeding it to its adulthood. This animal is well worth the time and frustration in getting it. As I already mentioned, it's very similar to Rex in terms of stats, but it also holds additional abilities. Anyway, that's it for me. I do apologize for this guide being a bit longer than my previous videos, but I don't want to risk the quality of information for a shorter duration of video and leave you guys susceptible to failing. So anyway, please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. As always, my information is in the description box if you would like to follow me on Twitch or join my cluster. I've been Ace of Nova, and I hope to see you all in my next quick guide.